All right, so today we're going to talk about content creation, and I know we've both been in the CMS industry for a while. So, what's your take on content creation, cameras? What have you seen?
Oh, I've seen everything. What haven't I seen? Probably a easier way to talk about it, right? I've seen things from people using Word documents. That's a very common one, right? Word documents or Excel on a shared drive and then passing that, or SharePoint or something like that, and passing that around for edits and approvals. I've seen emails flying around, people sending across discrete bits of emails and pushing that around, and then down to like on the CMS platform itself. If you're using something like Sitecore, then you can create the content directly within Sitecore and then use set up custom workflows to set up the approvals and the gates for those, and have some acceptance and rejections and suggestions for edits. Um, there's a big mix of how people are trying to create content, and content creation process is a bit of a blocker, right, for a lot of companies, and getting that onto the final mediums that they want to push it out to.
Yeah, and depending on the team, it seems to be different, right? Like if there's a product team, they want to use Trello. There's the marketing team, they want to use Gather Content or whatever the other system is. So it's like using different tools, but the end goal is content. And again, that's just one piece of the content, but that content can be used on a website, on a specification document for the product, or a mobile app, or 100 different things. So it feels like content authors or marketing professionals who are coming up with this content, they don't look at it from a component by component basis. They look at content as a whole, like product launch, right?
It's a campaign, right? It's the entire campaign that they're thinking about. It's not just the website that is the only piece of content that you need to generate for nowadays. It's the entire campaign process. I have a product launch, so I'll need some things on the website, but I also need to tie that in with a campaign that's going to go onto the social media, maybe into some print media or some CMS wire or newswire type of situation as well, with press releases. And so there's lots of different places that content is going out to.
Yeah, and then we've seen tools like there's several products which call themselves content hubs, where from ideation you create content and then get it up to a stage where you're happy with the content, but then again you're stuck at the point where now you have the content, you've brought everyone and their mother onto one system instead of all the disparate systems. You got all the content through the workflows, you got it in the final state. Now how do we get that content into the print, for them to print the product specs to put it with your product, or to social, to different socials, and all of these APIs are changing all the time, right? And
Yeah.
that's the interesting part, is how disconnected it seems no matter what you use.
Yeah, absolutely. There seems to be always some custom integrations that you need to then go and do again, right? Because you want to push it out to social, then maybe that product has something that will push it out to some social accounts, or they'll be like, "Hey, we're open, so you can just go and build whatever you like." Okay, now I have to build another social integration, or how do I get into from this content creation tool into my web tool, right? My CMS. Again, I need to create another integration, and then I need to think about, okay, well, content transformations again, right? The content was like this, and now I need to get it into this other format that this other tool is expecting that content to be in. So yeah, it just seems to be pushing that bucket of content and the problem from one system to another system, and we have a we have a multiple systems all of a sudden. We have a content management system which requires another system to manage the content in, and you're like, well, what's my content management system doing if it's not to manage content? And it's a bit of a, what's going on here?
I mean, we, we've gone through this with one of our customers when we went through the entire gamut, right? So we did the customer interviews, and then the good thing was we had the leadership buy-in. So they're like, "Yep, this is what we will use for content creation," all the way until the content's actually approved. In this case, the customer wanted to have white papers. They actually syndicated their content, which is sold as learning material and things like that. But even then, we had to write quite a bit of customization to use these Azure functions to push to different things, like to push it to social, to push it to the syndicated content place. It wasn't easy. So it's a matter of getting the buy-in, getting everyone onto this system, from product teams to marketing teams. So what do you think is an ideal, acceptable solution to you, Camrus?
I think, it's one of these, again, it depends, right, on the business needs. So this particular customer obviously had a lot of like white papers and learning materials that they were selling. So they had entire back office processes that needed to be followed, and an entire huge teams that are based around this content creation. If your organization is following something simpler, where it's just, we're mostly just focused on web content, then using some of these newer headless SaaS-based CMSs, I think you can achieve a lot of what you can with these separate content creation tools, right? The interfaces are super clean in these headless CMSs. It's very focused on content entry, as opposed to some of the traditional CMSs where it's about visual look and feel, right? It's most of these are cleaner interfaces just for content entry. They have good workflow tools. They have good calendar functionality as well, right? To allow you to schedule when content will go out, when content needs to be created. So you're almost building this entire hub within the CMS, and you can have that separated off. With other organizations where they're truly focused heavily on content, and content is their main driver, what they are selling, then having these separate tools does help within the organization, right? Something which is focused and dedicated on their need.
Yeah, but the one good thing we saw with this process is that it took out a lot of the manual processes in place, especially with the company we're talking about. So it was nice to get out of that, this part of the company only does it in WordDoc. This part of the company only uses Gather Content. That way, bringing everyone on, at least it's seamless. It's in one central location. Even if you can't really automatically push to the website or the mobile app, at least you have it. Oh, let me go get the latest copy on product X or service Y, and they're able to get that.
Yeah, you can write those sync tools, right? Or you can always write those sync tools to get that content across. I think one of the important parts of that conversation we had was they had no idea where their blockers were for their content, right? So somebody would make a change, somebody would request an approval. It sat somewhere in somebody's queue, but nobody really knew, because it was, a bunch of emails or whatever that was flying around. So now you could actually streamline that, and you could actually have some metrics as to where is the content being slow. And that's not to go and finger point, right, to people and say why are you so slow. It can actually highlight some important organizational data, right? Like the start, we're understaffed here, we're overworked over here, or the processes still are not quite right, so we need to provide better training to those people in this side. So there's a lot of information that's unlocked all of a sudden, because you have that data now available to you as to where is our processes taking long, how can they be improved, and how can that streamline the business further.
Yeah. And then for web only, and we've talked about this before, for web only kind of companies who mainly want to push to the web channel, we still have kind of like a divide, right? So I think I like using the data entry mode in a CMS because it's faster. I feel like I have more control. And what's interesting is, for a lot of the guys or gals we've talked to who are marketing professionals, legal, they tend to go half and half. Some of them like the visual way of entering content onto a website. Some of them like the data entry way of entering content into the website. I wonder what makes them pick either or. It just is still interesting to me to think about that.
Yeah, I've worked at some like highly technical companies before, where they just want to enter technical information, right? And they're like, I just want the raw interface because I have highly technical information I want to enter. And it's always in this specific format because it's a spec sheet or something like that, right? And that's all they want. They want to go in, put their information in and out. They're like, I don't really care what the pretty front end really looks like. It's very technical info. Whereas others are like, no, I really like the visual aspect, and it's highly marketing focused, and the visual aspect of it is sometimes a bit more important than the content itself, right? So you do get a mix, and I think whatever CMS you pick, it's nice to have the options to have both.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in headless space, there's quite a few options, and hopefully we can do like a
it hasn't been a lot of options, right? It's something that's new, and some of the vendors are adding. And I think that's one of the things that when we started looking at headless CMSs was like, I'm kind of used to having this highly visual editor and composing pages, right? Not just the stack, but we're composing pages with components and various data sources for those components. And that's something that wasn't there in most headless CMS space, in most of the headless CMS space, right? It was very static, templated pages. So it's nice to see that evolution coming about.
Well, yeah, when we started, it was nothing. Then you got some kind of a compose. And I think right now there's like no visual editor, partial visual editor where you're just dropping components, but you don't know what it looks like. Something like a Web Spotlight from Content where you can actually put on components, add, remove, and add stuff. StackBit, I think we looked at StackBit to spoke with the founders of StackBit as well, so they do really well. So hopefully it'll get better.
Contentful has their compose component coming out as well, right? Which is in the works. So I think more and more all these vendors will do it. Prismic has slices, I think it is, Prismic slices. That's another editor. So yeah, there's more and more of these coming. So there'll be more like full-fledged CMSs, traditional CMSs. I think the one thing that I spoke to you about on this was if all of these vendors are coming out with these pieces, is do you maintain like independent? Are they independent still, right? Or are they giving you hooks into closely tie their code base into your solution, and then all of a sudden you're kind of back into having this very technology solution focused solution rather than it being agnostic. Like that's one of the good things about composable DXP, right? And the headless space is it's very agnostic, and it's easy to just flip one out and put another one in. I don't think that happens very often, but from a vendor point of view like us, it allows us to have this very flexible code base that we can reuse across multiple technology stacks.
Yeah. So I mean, to that point, I guess the independent way of thinking of it is the Compose, which was released by Uniform, right? It's agnostic of what your backend CMS is, for that matter, but at the same, I think it still has a lot of way to evolve to make it visual, but that'll keep you agnostic of a specific vendor.
True. Yeah.
All right. So hope we'll do another one about visually editing pages for your marketers coming soon. Thank you so much for joining today.
All right. Thanks, everyone.